Hey guys, welcome back. This is the International Master of Givon here, and today I wanted to show you some cool, very cool idea in the Russian defense as black. So basically, it's an opening system revolving around a couple of very subtle traps that you can try to play. What I'm going to be recommending here is especially suitable for quick time control games, so basically blitz and rapid. But if you're bold enough, you can also try it in full-time control games. Depends on how well prepared are you and how much do you, let's say, want to risk, or let's say not trust your opponent enough to find all of those very subtle ideas. So the line goes e4, e5, knight f3, and in this position probably most of you automatically play a move like knight c6, which is the main move. And I want to look now at the line start with knight f6. This is called the Russian opening, the Russian defense, or the Petrov defense. The most common move here for white is knight takes e5, and this is the move that I'm going to be covering. I want you to notice also that white has at least one more important option, which is to go pawn to d4. I'm not going to be covering this move at all because this is another thematic move completely, and it's out of the scope of this video. So if you want to play the idea that is going to be presented later on, you should also study this move, but it's there is not enough time for one video to also cover this move. So let's focus for the time being for the move knight takes e5. And here, a very important moment. The typical players who play the Petrov defense automatically play the move d6 in this position, because for most people it's pretty well known that the move knight takes e4 is basically impossible because of a very famous trap, which I remember back in the day when we were playing kind of children's chess was super popular amongst everybody, the move queen e2. The idea being that if this knight retreats, white has this discovered attack with knight c6, winning the black queen. And basically, for most people, the move knight takes e4 is basically a losing move and should not be played. And I think in many cases, if you will play knight takes e4, your opponent will just assume that you just blundered and that you don't know opening theory. But this is the idea of this video. I will be recommending the move knight takes e4 for those of you who like some spicy ideas in the opening. So if white basically doesn't play the move queen e2, then there is no other move that can bother us. All other moves are pretty harmless for black, and if he plays anything like normal move like d4, black can just continue to play some common sense move and be completely okay. So the only move that should be kind of worrisome for us is the move queen e2. So what's the idea? What are we going to do now? Aren't we just losing? So it turns out that black has this little resource of playing the move queen e7, queen takes e4. At the moment white is just a piece up, but we are going to be using the spin against the white queen to play this little move d6. And it turns out that this position is more complicated than it appears to be. First of all, as you can see, white cannot really maintain an advantage of having a piece up. So the best thing that he can do is settle for going into variation where he has only one pawn up, but he is very safe. So the only move that I consider to be kind of important here is the move pawn to d4, basically trying to defend the knight on e5 and at least gain a pawn. To me, no other move kind of makes sense, especially basically if black plays any normal move like bishop c4 or knight c3, black will just take back the knight on e5 and he will be completely fine. So d4, d takes e5, we're regaining the piece. This is the first choice for white that is very important. Many people will take here with the queen on e5, and there is a very good reason for it. White is winning a pawn, so automatically he thinks about going for an endgame where he thinks that if he has a pawn up, he has good winning chances, like we always being taught. When you are up material, exchange pieces. So I believe that many of the people that you will play against will play the move queen takes e5, even though it's an inferior move, as we shall see later. After queen takes e5, we will take on e5. And our idea here is basically to play for very quick development and use the vulnerability of the pawn on e5 to gain some very nice tempos. So we play bishop to f5, attacking that pawn on c2. There are a couple of ways to defend it. Also, white can choose to sacrifice this pawn, but I think the average chess player will choose between the move c3 and the move bishop d3. Bishop d3 is actually a move that looks like a very normal move, developing a piece and well, offering some more exchanges. This is definitely a move I will expect a club player to face. But here black just takes on d3 and creates a new weakness, this backward pawn on d3, which we are going to be attacking straight away, knight c6, attacking the pawn on e5 and also preparing long castling. This is one more thing that you should be getting used to when playing this variation. In 99% of those variations, black will be aiming to play long castles and not short castling, because with long castling, we accelerate the development of our pieces and we immediately put pressure against the d file. So, for example, f4, knight b4, and we see that it's already difficult to face the threat of knight takes d3 and also knight c2. So one game continued king d2, and after long castles, white is already having some problems here because he cannot really defend the pawn on d3. And black has an excellent position. So going back to the position after the move bishop f5, if you remember, bishop d3 is already, I consider to be a pretty substantial mistake. c3 is the most commonly played move in this position. Once again, trying to hold on to the pawn. This is a very human instinct. Black continues his queenside development, knight d7. Please pay attention that you should not play knight c6, which looks like a more centralized square for the knight, because here white has a little bit of an annoying option to pin our knight, which wouldn't be as effective here, because here, if white plays bishop to b5, we can just chase it away very easily with c6. So after knight d7, once again, most players would try to defend the pawn on e5, so we can expect a move like f4 to be played. And here, basically, black has lots of good moves. Long castling is a very natural move, which is also the most commonly played move, which is a good move. But I wanted to recommend even the more straightforward move, pawn to f6. Our idea here is to use our very substantial lead in development to open up some central files against the white king and go for an immediate assault. So if white is very greedy and he takes another pawn on f6, you can see that now the central file is being opened up against the white king and is going to be suffering for it. So we just take back on f6. And black's development here is just extremely smooth. He will castle long. He will play the move bishop to c5, also cutting off white's potential castling. And his rook very, very quickly will come to e8 to attack the white king. So one example revariation is knight d2, long castles, bishop e2, for example, getting ready to castle, but once again, black is not going to allow that. Bishop c5, followed by rook h to e8. I think this position is probably almost resignable for white, even though he is a pawn up, and it doesn't seem like there is anything immediate going on, but white is just completely hopeless in terms of his development, and his king is stuck in the center basically forever. So to conclude, on move number 7, the move queen takes e5, which looks like a tempting move, exchanging pieces and going for the endgame, is an inaccurate move. White's only move here to fight for the advantage is d takes e5. So once again, white is a pawn up, but we are going to be using the same theme of attacking this vulnerable pawn on e5 to get some quick development. So knight c6, attacking that pawn. And here we have another crossroads. Basically, white has lots of different ways to try and defend the pawn on e5. And even the move which I consider to be the best move for white, and the one that we should be afraid of the most, is actually the move knight to c3, which basically says for black, you know what, you just take back that pawn, I want to complete my development and just, you know, play a normal game. But from my experience, the move knight c3, if you play in a blitz game, is probably the least likely move to be played by the average club player. I expect a move like bishop b5 or bishop f4 to be played. Also, one more possible move is pawn to f4. Let us cover these options. So let's start with the most important part of this video, which is basically what I think is the main trap that black should remember in all of those lines. Bishop f4, when I was facing this line at the first time, this is the move that I chose to play as white. This looks like the most natural move. You develop a piece, you defend the pawn on e5. What can be more natural, right? And this is now a rule of thumb that I want to teach you about all of those lines in this variation of the Russian defense. When you see a bishop on f4, search for that g5 move. Not only gaining a tempo on that bishop, but also preparing the development of the bishop to g7, which is very often a piece that is getting kind of stuck in those variations. And also setting up a very, very nice trap, which you are going to see now. After the move g5, once again, the most commonly played move, and a move that you kind of almost expect to be played automatically, is bishop g3, right? Keeping on the defending the pawn on e5. But here comes our little trap, which we base our whole opening repertoire around. In this position, black has a material gaining move. You can try to search it, try to find it by yourself and stop the video if you want. This is the move pawn to f5. There is something about this move which is very much psychologically difficult to find, especially in the quick time control game, because it's easy to miss the fact that white cannot really take with the en passant because of the pin against the white queen. So the queen is forced to move, after which, for example, queen goes somewhere, and now black can basically just trap the white bishop, and he's going to just gain material, and black is already winning. So very, very nice trap, and one which you must remember, because we basically base this whole opening repertoire about it. So keep in mind this motif. A bishop on f4 is screaming for the move g5 in those lines. Let's continue. What if white tries to basically defend the pawn with the move f4, which I personally, this move to me feels a little bit wrong, because you make another pawn move, you don't really develop your pieces, and white's position here is, to me, looks a little bit dubious. Now, when we see the move f4, we should definitely seize the opportunity to play the move bishop to g4, because before that we couldn't really play this move. The queen was defending that square. And this is a very, very nice opportunity, not only to develop a piece, but also to prepare once again the move long castles. I will once again repeat that. We should always be aiming to play long castles in these variations in order to create some pressure on the d-file. Here it's even more evident. We will be threatening the invasion on d1. Please also pay attention that white cannot play h3 to kick away our bishop, because after queen h4, he should probably resign. His king is forced to move to d2, after which a huge attack will come with something like long castles. Don't do that at home. White must play a move like bishop d3 here, and please pay attention to the following maneuver. White is now ready to go for short castling, which we should not allow. So here black should play queen h4 check. Sorry, queen h4 check. g3, queen h3. This ensures that white cannot castle short here because of the pressure on the f1 square. And black can continue basically his own plan of development with long castles and bishop c5. And it's very nice that black managed to basically cut off both of white's castle links. And he's just having a very nice initiative here. So to conclude, also the move f4 should not only not be worrisome for us, but we should welcome this type of move. Now let us move to the move bishop to b5, which I think is a move that you are very, very likely to face very often in practice. This is also statistically the most played move in this position, even though I don't like it so much and I think it's the wrong move. Black plays the obvious move, bishop to d7, unpinning his knight, once again getting ready to castle long. Now he is threatening to take the pawn on e5. So in this position, basically, white can choose a couple of moves. It would be a very bad decision to take on c6, because this is basically allowing black to recapture with the bishop. Now that bishop is a perfect piece on c6, exerting lots of pressure on the long diagonal. Don't do that at home. So let's see what white can try to do here. White is basically forced to make some kind of a useful move here. If he tries once again to play that move f4, we can use the same motif of playing g5, bishop g3 and f5, the same type of idea that we have seen earlier. This is exactly the same. So let's take a look at what happens if white just tries to develop his pieces with a move like knight c3. That's a normal move. We should probably not take that pawn immediately on e5, because if queen takes e5, white has this intermediate move bishop takes c6, which wins material for white. So let's just continue developing our pieces. I like the move long castling here, even though also in some games the move queen b4 was featured, which I think is also a logical move, getting ready to develop that bishop. But I will be recommending the move long castles on move number 9, after which black is already threatening to take that pawn on e5 without being afraid of his pawn on b7 getting lost. And white cannot do too much really to stop us from doing that. Once again, if he plays bishop to f4, we can use the same motif of g5, bishop g3. And here only one small difference is because the white queen is already defended. We cannot really play the move f5, our planned move. But what we can do is just to play the move a6, bishop a4 and rook e8. And as you can see, we have enough pressure to regain that pawn on e5, and there is not too much that I can do about it. So, last but not least, let's see what happens if white does know or find the best move, or the move that I believe is the best move, knight c3. That's the move that I will also be recommending for the white players. If you face this line as black, you know all of those traps, and you want to just get a safe advantage with white, go knight c3. Don't get to all of those kind of crazy variations like everybody does as white. So knight c3, basically this is a very kind of normal looking move, just allowing black to regain that pawn, which he should do. Queen takes queen, knight takes queen. So the position is extremely symmetrical, but because white has the one extra tempo of the opening, he is going to be probably slightly better. Bishop f4 is a very logical move. Once again, developing the bishop and putting pressure on this diagonal. Black should play bishop to d6, setting up once again a small trap. Black is threatening to make all kinds of discovered attacks here. For example, if white makes the obvious move, long castles, black can go knight d3 check, bishop takes f4 check, king to b1, and black can just castle, and he's completely fine. And in the long term, He can even be playing for victory as he has the advantage of the two bishops. So the best move for white in this position, going back to move number 10, is bishop to g3, safeguarding that bishop from any kind of discovered attacks. I think that many people might fail to find such a move in a practical game because it's kind of going against the opening principles, which state that you should not move the same piece more than once. So expect people to miss this kind of move in the game, but let's assume they do make this move. Black should now invest also one move to play that little defensive move f6. Two ideas with this move. First of all, solidifying that knight on e5. We will see later on why it might be important. And also in some variations, it's allowing our king to get a square on f7 to go to when he's under attack and when we want to connect our rooks later on. So white is castling long. Black plays bishop to d7, also perhaps getting ready to castle long. And here the best move for white, and I think the only move which really kind of creates any problems for black, is the move knight to b5, trying to use white's development advantage here to exert pressure on our bishop on d6. And now we are going to trade off that bishop on d5. Bishop takes bishop. Please pay attention that we cannot really play the move c6 because our bishop on d6 will be hanging. So black is forced to play king to f7. And this position that you see in front of you is what I consider to be probably the worst case scenario for black in this whole opening system. White is definitely slightly better here. He has the two bishops. He has a slightly better development. But definitely in order to win such a position for white, he will be needing lots of technique and to show definitely some experience in endings and in kind of converting slight advantages. So if you are feeling confident in holding a slightly inferior position, definitely go for this position. It's definitely not easy to win for white. And, well, I hope that you enjoyed this kind of short video lecture about this little trap in the Petrov defense. The official name of this opening, as far as I know, is the Damiano variation of the Russian game. So if you want to search more information on that online, this is the name you should be searching for. Once again, knight takes e5, knight takes e4. This is our idea. You can score lots of nice victories as black in this variation in the quick time control games and also in short time control games if your opponent is a little bit kind of naive and falls into your ideas. So hope you enjoyed this video. Hope to see you guys in the next videos. See you guys. Bye bye.